Welcome to the Real Joseph Lamtman. Welcome back to the Real Joseph Lamtman. If you're a returning viewer, welcome. If you're new here, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Yeah, I am Joseph Lamtman. Welcome back to my podcast. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Happy Monday to you guys. Hope you guys having a good week or starting off your week well. It's already May. 2023 is flying right by, and so, but 2023 for me so far, a lot more growth, a lot more lessons, a lot more just evolving as a person, just a lot more becoming more and more just settled each and every day, and just feeling good, feeling pretty good. I've done a lot of great things in the last year, like I've shared, and just a lot of things that made me go outside my comfort zone, and proud of myself, and glad of everything I've done within the last year. And most importantly, I'm appreciative of all the people involved as well, what God's done for me. Um, it's been amazing getting to know new people and connecting with people, reconnecting with people, um, and just yeah, it's all about relationships, not just with people, but also just many other things as well, which is kind of what I'm going to be sharing today. Uh, but before I get into that, like I said, if you're new here, like, subscribe, share. Please hit that like button. It will help me with my channel here on YouTube, fighting against the algorithm and stuff. That's why now I'm also on Rumble. Yes, I'm on Rumble now. I'm doing a lot more. All my videos have been over there for the last 2 weeks. A lot more exclusive stuff, uh, and a lot more cool things to come. That's just the kind of warm up we've been doing over there. I've been doing myself, and me and my man Mike Antonace have been doing a lot of videos on sports related with the Cavs and the draft, stuff like that. I put out a couple videos myself, shared some things. Um, so yeah, go follow me on Rumble as well for a lot more raw content I'm going to be doing, a lot more just direct. There's not a whole lot of you don't do any editing on Rumble. It's more just raw content. That's what it is. You don't have to fight with algorithms either and all that stuff. So I've enjoyed my time on Rumble so far. I look forward to doing more of it. But I'm back here on YouTube today. That's why I'm here. Um, yeah, so no, it's good to be back here on YouTube. That's why I was gone the last couple weeks. But my last video I did, I've had a lot of people reach out to me about it. Got some great feedback. Hope it really helped a lot of people. And today's video is kind of piggybacking off of that into a deeper level. And so my last video I talked about Zion Williamson and all the stuff that was going on a couple weeks ago with Zion. When the Pelicans got bounced in the playoff. Oh no, they didn't make the playoffs. I think they made the play in, but either way, they lost. And so there was a lot going on with Zion. I talked about in the video, kind of what Zion's comments meant, kind of what I thought he was saying, how he said he physically felt fine, but he didn't feel like himself. And I shared my experience when I was in ninth grade, and kind of there's some correlation there, and kind of just what I went through and experienced, and how maybe Zion could be going through some things. I don't know. I wasn't diagnosing Zion or saying anything like that. But just go watch the video and you'll understand if you haven't seen it yet. But today, I'm piggybacking off of the one part of that video where I talk about my experience in ninth grade and kind of all that I went through that year, right? And there's two things about that looking back now from let me start here. So today I'm going to be talking about how I identified my root cause. And what I mean by my root cause, your root cause is the root cause of your anxiety, your panic disorder, which is what I'm referring to. But your root cause could also be to any problem, any issue going on in your life, right? And so it's your initial event, the root cause. And for most of the time with anxiety and panic disorders, your root cause usually is from the ages of 0 to 7. And so what I'll be explaining today is from the ages of 0 to 7, and how in that time frame when my root cause occurred, how the subsequent events after started to build upon that initial root cause, which again took that anxiety that started off like this and made it bigger, right? And so and so in that video I also explained how I had an incident in my football practice in 2011 I went through, where I had an incident where it was really hot that day. It was first day of practice and pads, and I overheated a little bit, and I kind of just overreacted, and I went into a full panic meltdown on the sideline. And from that point on, in the years since, it made me more fearful. right? And it made me more. It grew that hypochondria. Plus, I also grew up around hypochondria too, just from, um, there was a lot of just from my generational anxiety. Nobody's fault. Once this all happened with me, it was a lot easier for people to identify why that hypochondria was there in the families, because we had a lot of people that were born ill and stuff in our family, and so it was a lot of stress on the family years before I was born, and generations, like I said, for decades, and just that kind of just carried with the family, and it was a lot of misinformation, a lot of just bad habits, unnecessary habits that weren't really healthy, weren't really accurate either, and so I was carrying a lot of that too. But what really started mine? So I gave kind of the hypochondria side of it last week in that video, or 2 weeks ago rather, with the Zion video, and I've shared that many times in the store on this podcast. But the story I'm going to tell today is what really is the root cause, and the root cause has more to do with safety. And I'm going to explain that now. What I mean by that? Why does it have to do with safety? My root cause, because if you go back to my experience I tell when I was in ninth grade, yeah, I was going through hypochondria, but there was a safety mechanism to it as well, which I didn't actually discover until within the last year, really this year, 2023, where I really finally really got a good grasp on it. And that now I know, and I've been doing a lot of great work for myself still. Um, not where I used to be at all. Thank gosh, and thank you to all the people that have helped me, like Dennis and all the great people that have helped me along the way, and most probably God. I've grown and come a long, long way, and just at much more better place in my life now, like I said. But and ready for a lot of new things. But uh, I was able to identify a lot of this though. Just through it took me a long time, and sometimes it takes people a long time for years to find what that initial event really was. Because when all this started for me, I was only 15 years old. I'm only 23 now, but I am a lot more older and more wiser now, more mature. Still young, but more mature, and just kind of um, just all this with maturity and just growth, no natural development, and just now I'm at a point now, just through everything I know about anxiety. I wouldn't call myself an expert in anxiety, but I know everything about anxiety, mental health, all that. That was my college for 5 years, was studying and learning all that. And so, and actually experience it too. I mean, experience is the best teacher. So at a high level, at times. And so with all that being said, I found what my root cause was, and it had to do with safety. And so I'm gonna give a little backstory today, kind of similar to the last one. Um, and yeah, so let's get into it. All right, so I was born in Akron, Ohio. I'm gonna give a little backstory on my life real quick, kind of leading up to all this. So again, from the ages of 0 to 7, right? That's a lot of people's root causes occur. So I was born in Akron, Ohio. Grew up in the area, mainly Cuyahoga Falls. That's where I lived most of my life, and shout out to Cuyahoga Falls. Um, Growing up, I lived in a pretty stable environment from those ages 0 to 7, right around. So again, remember that. Keep key on that. It's from the ages 0 to about when I was born to about 6 or 7. Um, Pretty stable. Had both my parents in my home. Yeah, lived in a house. My initial home, when I was born, we were there for a short time. Then we moved, bought a house, um, and lived in this. I lived in the same house for until I was 6, 7 years old, and it was great living in the home I grew up in from that time. In that time frame, great house. Shout out to Lloyd Street. All the people over there I grew up with, but yeah, it was a great home to live up and to grow up in, and it was cool because it was a great place for a kid to play, and there was neighbors, and plus at the time my grandmother, my uncle lived up the street, um, on the same streets. So that was comforting as well. Used to be able to go up there all the time with my cousins and everybody. It was a great place to grow up. This home, I had we had like a finished basement as well. It's not like all my games down there. Like I had the basketball Papa Shot. I have one of those. Uh, I had like a little Nerf hoop on the door. I used to sit there with my Cavs gear on. Every time LeBron would dunk a ball, I'd try to go dunk a ball. Every time LeBron sat on the bench, my bench was like the stairs. I go sit on the bench. Huge Cavs fan growing up. Love sports. But I was a big LeBron fan, big Cavs fan. At that time, obviously, that was like the biggest thing in Cleveland. So, um, yeah. So I had like all these toys and stuff growing up. Great place to grow up in with my cousins and my parents. I had a big backyard as well that was fenced in. And I used to go back there with my little toys, drive around like my little John Deere car, had my bike, basketball hoop. I could sit out there and just shoot the ball for hours at that house. Yeah, neighbors would come over sometimes. Like a couple people that lived next door I knew well, the Kozovs, who were uh, our family friends, and so yeah, it was a great place growing up. And also growing up too, I spent a lot of time in Florida, which is this picture here. Spent a lot of time in Clearwater, Florida, Tampa area. That's kind of like I've always considered that my second home. There was a period where I basically lived there for a short period when I was a kid, and I spent a lot of time there in Clearwater. You can see that's me right there on the screen. Spilled something on my shirt. um, uh, yeah, that's at the Clearwater Threshers game, which is the Double A team with the Philadelphia Phillies. So if you're from Akron, we have the Rubber Ducks, which is the affiliate to, which is now the Guardians, the Major League team. This is the Threshers, which is the affiliate to the Philadelphia Phillies. And so as a kid, I spent a lot of time down there in Clearwater. A lot of time. Went down, flew so many times down there. By the time I was 6, 7 years old, I probably been down there. I can't even count how many times. Like I said, basically lived there for a period. You know, as a kid growing up, had all my families, my aunts, my uncles, all my cousins, my grandparents. Started off in public school when I was, I think, yeah. So I started public school when I was 5. Well, I did preschool, first off preschool when I was about 4 or 5, and then I went to public school, kindergarten, a year early. Then in my initial like class, went to Lincoln Elementary in Cuyahoga Falls. Was okay, but public school was not my mom and dad. They wanted to put me in a better, little more stable environment. So I went to Summit Christian School, private school, and just opened in the Falls. I went there from Summit Christian School from kindergarten all the way till 8th grade. Went there for about basically almost 10 years. I was there. Shout out to Summit Christian. I spent there. And so yeah, I grew up in a pretty stable environment. Went to a nice, more stable school. Once I got to Summit Christian, and so again, this is all from the ages of 0 to 7. So first, so from 5 to 7, that's when I about started school. 4 or 5 to about 7, that's when I started school. But like I said before, I spent a lot of time in Florida for the most part, traveling down there. My aunt, a couple of aunts that lived down there. A lot of family lived down there in the area. This picture here, I'm actually at my aunt's pool, my Aunt Joan's pool. Shout out to Aunt Joan. She had all these photos still. So that's me swimming down there in Florida, having a good old time like I always did. I loved going down there. And then, yeah, there's me again at the game. Me and my cousin Matt at Frenchie's. That's anybody goes to Clearwater Beach knows Frenchie's. Best place to go. The original one, though. There's some other ones, though. But the one on the beach across from the Palm Pavilion, that's one you got to go to. I had a lot of great memories at that place. I'm kind of like a legend there at Frenchie's. They know me well still to this day. Because how many times I went in there when I was a kid. And when I went there as a kid, growing up on Clearwater Beach, going down there at night as well, was pretty awesome for a 5-year-old. I was probably the only 5-year-old in that place. Doing the things I was doing. There was time because my aunt lived down there. She knew everybody at these places. Because she worked for, at the time, it was Bright House. So you meet all these people, you know a lot of people down there. And so, I mean, there was times I would go shoot pool with a bunch of people. I would be, there was one time they had a live band there. The band brought me up on stage. And I gave a performance to everybody that night at Frenchie's. I still have those drumsticks as well. Yeah, it was a great time growing up just in Ohio and down in Florida. And going to Frenchie's, all the memories I have going there as a kid, just in Clearwater, going to the games. And I have a lot of great memories too at the games, going to the Threshers games. because it was Bright House Field, so my aunt worked for Bright House, so we used to go to the games all the time because we can do whatever we want. So at that time, the Phillies, I remember going down there for spring training, and the reason why, well, let me, okay, the reason why I have the Boston hat on there too is because my mom's side is from, all her family is basically from Boston. Well, my mom was born in Texas, but um, all her family is mainly from New England, from the Boston area. My dad's whole family is more from Akron, east side, north side of Akron. And so, which is actually why, I don't know if you guys noticed, that's why I have my hat on today that they got me when we get on the screen here. Where is it? Button. Got my Boston spring training hat on today. I wouldn't consider myself like a Red Sox fan, but they always send me all this stuff because they're all fans and they still go down to spring training. But that's why I got my hat on today. But yeah, so I remember real quick. I remember it's a story going down. Or I went to a Threshers game. This is when during spring training. And this is when the Phillies were like a team. They had Ryan Holiday. They had Ryan Howard. Had a lot of great players. They were stacked. And I remember after one of the games, there was like a bar in the back of the stadium, and that's where everybody would go. And you could only go over there if you like. It's where all the players would go after the games. So it's kind of blocked off because my aunt worked for Bright House. We were able to get in there, and so I would go in there, hang out with all these players. I'm hanging out with Major League Baseball players. I remember sitting on Ryan Howard's lap at the bar, just hanging out with him after the game, and he was sitting there talking to me and a bunch of other players. I have the helmet too and the bat they autographed for me. And so I don't know if there's any pictures though. I'll have to ask my aunt. But yeah, sitting there on Ryan Howard's lap, hanging out with him. He was all-star first baseman at the time, one of the best players in baseball. And so it's really cool. I had a great experience growing up down there, going to the beach all the time. Yeah, and just kind of, there's me there at the bowling alley. Got a strike. Was very proud of that. But yeah, just had a great time down there. There's me again, repping that Cavs jersey with St. Patty's Day. That's at Pete and Shorty's down there in Clearwater. Great burger place. Where was that? Got my LeBron Cavs jersey on. I got my hat on and my chain. Oh boy, having a good old time down there. But that was me growing up from the age of 0 to, from when I was born till 6 or 7, and a lot of fun, a lot of just awesome people in my life, family and friends and kids growing up, kids I got to grow up with, and living in the same home. A lot of stability, but just a lot of fun, right? Just living a life, and just whether I was in Ohio, whether I was in Florida, down at the beach, like right there in the picture, having a good old time. It was very free, like just like I said, just be like, and that's a key point too. Just like when I was at that age too, I just didn't really care. I was real friendly with anybody. I would talk to anybody about any age. I was loved going, having a good time as a kid, just kind of like the party. Life of the party in a way, just like like going up on stage for everybody with a packed bar, getting on the drums. I didn't really bother me. Like, I just loved being around people, just having a good time as a kid, just really fun. And yeah, until about 6 or 7, and so really just open free. So it's my 6th birthday here at the same house I grew up in. Yeah, that's me, and then there's me. I found this photo. Shout out to Caitlin, who's on the left, and Kara, who's on the right, Kadziv. That's me, us 3 sitting there at my birthday party. We were neighbors. And so, like I said, our dads and our moms grew up together, went to high school together, and we're good friends. I'm still good friends with Chris to this day. Shout out to Chris. Yeah, and shout out to Caitlin and Kara. But so I grew up in a pretty cool, stable environment. A lot of people, a lot of fun. My dad had his own construction company, was doing hauling, his own business for a long time. Him and my uncle worked together. My Uncle Chad, shout out to Chad. And so, and Chad was my uncle was the one who lived up the street. He was younger at the time, still lived with my grandmother. And so him and I were really close, still are really close to this day. And so, yeah, so I'm kind of trying to set the frame here for you guys, set this environment I grew up in. It was very stable, a lot of family, a lot of friends. It was pretty fun, right? And so, but then my dad had to shut down the company when I was 6, 7 years old. 7, excuse me. And so he just couldn't run anymore. It was just a lot. It's a lot of stress when you own your own company. It's a lot of stress. And so my dad decided he had to. It was best in interest for him. My mom and I decided to shut it down, and so at that time when all that happened, this house I grew up in, we eventually decided to sell the home as well, just because it was the best thing for us at the time. And so when we sold the home, we had to move, obviously, and we just locked. My dad shut down the company. We just moved, and so now kind of this world I was used to all changed just like that at 7 years old. And so I moved into an apartment. We got an apartment on the other side of town, and that's me at the apartment going sledding. And so with my Browns hat on. Um, but yeah, I when that change occurred, though, this is how I identified my root cause. This is what the basis of this video today. So when we moved, I remember as a kid at 7 years old, it was a lot different. I was, like I said, I was living in the same house. I was up the street from my grandparent and my uncle, my cousins was around the corner. Everything was great. My friend. So then also when I moved, it was a big change. Not only that, we moved from a house to I went to an apartment, which is a little different environment. Obviously, living in an apartment than growing up in a house. You have all this freedom, your own yard, all this stuff. And so living in the apartment, this is how I identify my root cause, was because when I lived in that apartment, I remember it was a little more spaced out apartment, and I didn't like just like how spaced out it was. And I had my own room. I remember I had like my own bathroom in my own room too in my apartment. But it was just it was a shock for me as a kid at 7 years old. And I just remember the feeling I had at times as a kid. I didn't feel safe because it was a change in my environment, and there was just a lot going on too at the time too. We just, like I said, we sold the company. There's a lot of stress going on too. My mom and dad, that were going through, trying to figure things out, and so all this change is going on. But I was unsettled for my environment in a dramatic way. It was a lot more dramatic, like just because it happened so fast too. I remember just that feeling as a kid at night. I remember I used to get really like anxious at night at 7 years old. It was kind of like scary. It'd be really dark in the apartment, and I was, wasn't familiar living like this now. It was a lot different. Everything just changed dramatically. But that change made me feel unsettled, which I didn't feel safe in that apartment at all. Now, looking back at that apartment, those memories, I go by that apartment complex all the time now because I live not too far from it. But it's funny when I go back there, when I go by there still, I just think all the times. And kind of that same feeling. That's what it was. It was a gut feeling that I had back then. I could still feel it throughout the years up until recently, which is how I was able to find my root cause. Because I was able to connect the dots. And how I was able to connect the dots was, in the last couple of years, at times when my anxiety was bad, there was times I couldn't sleep. And I couldn't sleep at night for days. And I was starting to get worried about sleep, and the hypochondria would kick in, and just the insomnia kicks in, and you start to get a little. It's kind of like the experience I shared back in January of this year when my dad had to go through that surgery, and how that's the first time I kind of went through that with somebody really close, and how I couldn't sleep for a couple of days, just too anxious, no sleep at all. So I was able to kind of really connect all the dots around that period, and just kind of after a little bit. And what I connected them to was, I go back to that experience at football, right? When I had that incident, the hypochondria. Okay, so there's hypochondria. But why? And I had to keep asking myself, why? But why though did I really fear for my health? What really was it? It's not really my health. It wasn't the health anxiety. What's the problem here? And what it was it was that feeling with that apartment. I didn't feel safe. And so basically what happened was that initial event for me was at that apartment at 7 years old after the move. I didn't feel settled or safe. I felt really uncomfortable. I felt really isolated. Felt really, I just felt like I was in a whole different, realm. And I remember as a kid, I didn't like it either, moving, because I'm like, I love my house. I got all these people around me. I got my uncle up the street, my cousins, everybody. But, I was traveling to Florida a lot. Now at the apartment, I still did go to Florida a little bit, but wasn't as much, just because we had a lot of change going on. There's just a lot of this change going on in our house and our family. I remember that feeling at night. I couldn't sleep at night at that age, at 7, because I just hated being in that apartment. I remember just that change. I did not like the feeling in that apartment. I just felt so uncomfortable because of the change. I just remember how I felt. I remember like just the color. Like a lot of times too, you can identify your fear, your incidents, trauma, whatever it is, things you can remember, visualize through like color, and a lot of times those same colors still kind of bother you to this day, which is not actually, a lot of people don't realize that. That's why we do a lot of color breathing. Like what's your safety color, right? And breathe out your color of tension or anxiety or fear. And so mine was safety. That's what I identified my root cause as. And it makes sense because at 6, 7 years old, when I'm living in that apartment, I went from, you know, uh, this kid here who was out, living and doing his thing and doing whatever and having fun, to being confined in this apartment now. And just kind of everything was just changed dramatically. Uh, it makes sense because I just remember how I felt in that apartment. I remember just the whole time we lived there, it was probably, if we lived there for about if even a year, if even that, about almost a year we lived there. And it was a rough time for a family. We were going through a lot, and it got to the point where we had to move out of there even, and we had to live. We were basically homeless at this point. So now we go from having a house, everything's great, doing all this stuff, to living in an apartment, which was it was a big change for us, but it was still okay. I mean, we had a place to live, but it was a lot going on, a lot of change, just a lot of. Remember I said that feeling at night I couldn't sleep. I remember at 6, 7 years old, I had a hard time sleeping. At 7, sleeping in that apartment. I keep saying 6. At 7, sleeping in that apartment because it was just, the change was a lot. And I didn't like, the apartment was really spaced out too. Like everything was just far from each other, the rooms, and I just remember I did not like the feeling. And so, but again, and then after that, we had to move again. And we had to move this time, we didn't really have anywhere to go. And so we were really struggling. And so we had to go. I lived in my cousin's house, my aunt and my uncle's. And they lived in the same house for a while. And I used to go over to that house growing up. And my cousins and I were really close. And so here I go from having my own room, having all this backyard, all this stuff in my original house, to now I'm sleeping on a bedroom floor for 6, 7 months. And we're in someone else's home. Now, very thankful though to my aunt and my uncle for allowing us to stay there and be with my cousins, because it did still feel like home in a way, because I knew my cousins and my family. And it could have been a lot worse for us. Could have been a lot worse. Thankfully, God made a way for us in that time to, for us to my mom and dad to regroup, and to, my dad got a new job eventually, worked for days and days and days straight to make the money and stuff to build ourselves back up. My mom always made sure I was taken care of. And that's one thing I'll always take away. My mom and dad, through all, from those tough times, from when I was about 6, 7 years old, and during that period, and living in someone else's home, and basically confined in this small bedroom. I was sleeping on the floor every night that was really hard as a rock. And for a long period, for about 6, 7 months, good period, I slept there. And I was still able to go to, they were able to find a way to keep me going in that school, so I didn't have to leave my school. But also, I had a roof over my head. There was still something to eat every night. Could have been a lot worse. And so it was a very humbling experience for us as a family. But a lot of those lessons, even as a kid, I was only 7 years old, but there was a lot of things I learned as I got older, I look back at now, that will help me when I get older. Like, for instance, marriage and relationships, commitment. There's a lot of people that were in my mom and dad's position at that time. A lot of other married couples even, that probably would have, one of them would have ran away, or they would have got divorced. Friction would have happened. Something would have happened. They would have gave up, and which would have been, that have made it way worse on me. Obviously, that's probably the worst pain you can go through. I hear from a lot of people is divorce. I can't relate, but both my parents went through that, and both my parents grew up pretty rough in some ways, like just hard headed, a little more rough, a little more, had to go through a lot of things when they were growing up. And so they didn't want me to go through that. But they also taught me they showed me at that time as parents how to stick together, how to be committed to each other through tough times, stand by each other, most part keep God in the center, but also to fight through it, push, and how to nobody's going to make an excuse for it. There was no victimhood. There was none of that. My mom and dad got up every day and still kicked ass, made sure, we were right as a family. And eventually we got out of there. We got our own apartment again. And, you know, um, and we were able to build back up. And so, but again, they showed me that as a kid, but they didn't make no excuses. They didn't do any of that. My mom and dad, tough, worked, grinders, got up, no excuses, and just they stuck together. There's a lot of tough times. There's nights where you were like, how are we gonna make it? You start wanting to just sit there and cry your eyes out, but they didn't do that. And so, but also at the same time, my uncle allowed us to stay there, and it was good for me because I was able to be around my cousins, who I was already close with, but became closer with. And so I still kind of got that feel back. It was better than the apartment in some ways, believe it or not. Even though I didn't have my own room, my own home, but it was good just to be around people again, and just to be around kids my age, my cousins, and just play and just be a kid. And so it was good. And then after that, we moved to another apartment, and we finally got our own place again. And then shortly after that, my sister was born within the same year. And so, and when my sister was born, that kind of like reset our whole family because it was new. It was different for me. I didn't have a sibling until that point. I was 8 now when she was born, and so, I was 8, and when she was born, and it just kind of reset our whole family. It was what we needed. It was a blessing from God, and so, and then from that point on, we started to, at that apartment there was okay. We lived there for about a couple years, and it was fine. Although there was still times though I still struggled kind of at night, it just kind of, but it was better. And I started to feel a little better again. But in that time period, I went back to the same street I grew up on because my grandmother still lived over there. And so I basically just lived over there for a period. I would come home during the week, and because that's, my mom would take me to school, and that's where I stayed. But on the weekends, I would just go over to her house, and I would just play with a lot of the kids that still lived on that street. And I used to go over there every weekend. I would just go over there because that's where I lived at the apartment at the time. It was a duplex. There wasn't really anybody on that street. It was more of a city, busier street. And so I used to go back to my old street, and at that time, and play with all the kids there, and had a great time. Those 2 years, I remember those years too, of going over to her house back on Lloyd Street in Cuyahoga Falls. It was a lot of fun, a lot of great memories, and it was what I needed too at that time. And those 2 years were a lot of fun. My cousin would come over sometimes, and just a lot of fun. But it kind of felt like going back home again too. And then eventually after that, we got our own home again as a family. We found a place around the corner. We lived there and that's the house I lived in until I was 17. And so from 10 to 17, I went back to a home. And that's also around the same time when I lived in that home, when I had the instance of football, and then when I went to 9th grade, new school, and all that stuff. But in saying all this, right? And then I moved again when I was 17 to where I reside now. And that at that time, I was still going through it pretty bad. Caused a lot of more anxiousness and stuff. And so, saying all this, I know it's a mouthful I'm saying here, right? I'm trying to give you guys a kind of a timeline a bit. And so, saying all that, up until I was 21 years old, so 2 years ago, I was kind of, when I was 19, I started to slowly shift a little bit, and I was able to that's when I found the anxiety guy. I was starting to slow down. I was starting to kind of get myself back again a little bit. It took me a couple of years. I was starting to go around on town again more. I started riding my bike, and that became like a thing I just started to do every day. That really helped me. But up until 21, and then I talked about that summer, which I mentioned many times 2 years ago, where I kind of hit rock bottom again because I was just kind of, I felt like I was doing better, but I couldn't get it's almost like a car was stuck in snow, and the tires want to go, but they can't get traction, right? And that's when I hit rock bottom. But so the last couple years was when I started to really find myself again and really start to really identify what the root causes really were. And through all that, through the incidents of 9th grade year to, when I was 11 at football, and it's some other incidents too between that. Like, if you remember when I had one of my best friends in life, Zach Potok, on. We talked about there was a time where I went out of town with him and his family. It was me, him, his family, and Deshaun Martin, Debo, we call him. Some of you guys might know. We all went together to Florida for spring break. And when we were down there, I remember there was a period in that week where I started getting that health anxiety again. I started feeling, and I felt, but going back now, you see, because I found my root cause when I was at that apartment at 6, 7 years old, I was able to, identify why the other events turned out the way they did, why I interpreted them that way. Because this is how you guys can identify this maybe too with yourself. So at 6 years old, I have 7 years old. I have that change. It was right in between the two. So I keep saying 6, 7. I have this change happen, but I remember it's that feeling I had at that apartment and all the things that were going on at that time. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel settled, right? That change was really dramatic to me. And then going to living in a bedroom floor after that too. It was a very dramatic 180 change. And there was a lot of things in that time I didn't feel safe. And so fast forward, I started to do better in the years after that, 8, 9, 10. But then when I get to 11 years old and I have that incident in practice, guess what happened? That same feeling showed up, that same gut feeling. That day of practice, I started feeling a certain way. And when I started feeling a way I'd never felt before, I didn't feel safe. Key word there, safe. I did not feel safe. So what that caused me to do? Panic. Caused me to get anxious, right? Fast forward 2 years after that. 13 years old down in Florida with Zach and his family, right? I'm away from home. First time I really went out of town by myself without my parents too. I started off doing pretty good. Then I got down there. It was hot. There's a connection too, because remember I said the first day of practice, it was hot. We get down to Florida, it was hot. And there was a day I started to feel kind of similar and I didn't feel safe. Both my parents weren't around. I was 13, but I was out of town. People that I've trusted, I was felt family with. But it was different. It was change. Because it's the first time I'd ever done that. And so again, you kind of see the common theme here where I'm kind of laying out, but it all started with that initial root cause event at 6, 7 years old. So then the events at 11 feels that way. At 13, down at Disney, we went to Disney, went to Universal. And so down there in Florida at 13 with Zach and his family, same thing. I felt unsafe. But that unsafe feeling then what? Sparked hypochondria. That hypochondria sparked the anxiety and the panic. So you kind of see how all the correlation works here. You guys kind of see how now you connect the dots now. So fast forward then to 15 years old, I go to CUCA, new school. I went from the same school for 10 years. I go to a new school now. And I think the difference why that school was a change, because it was a lot bigger. Summit Christian was more of a smaller school. And it was a little more community. When it's smaller, you kind of know everybody a little bit more. And it's just kind of a different vibe too. A little different culture-wise in some ways. But so when I get to 15 years old, though, and you guys heard me when I told that story on the last episode, but the Zion episode, put all that together, it was not only hypochondria, but I didn't feel what? Safe. I didn't feel settled. And that's the same feeling I had at 6, 7 years old. So you guys kind of see now how I was able to connect all these dots. Because I used to look at, because when my anxiety got really bad, it was after 9th grade year. When I had to leave, right after high school, when I explained all that last time. So in 2015, when I had to leave school abruptly because my anxiety was at a 9-10 level, for years after that, I kept looking back at that incident at that time, thinking, okay, what went wrong? Trying to fix that just through talk therapy and medication. But once I finally once I moved and once I got to 18, 19 years old, I started working with the anxiety guy and I started to really start to question everything and start to say to myself, you know what? Because at that time, like I said, from 15 up until 18, I was doing the same, just going to talk therapy and, taking medications and, kind of a lot of what the first line of defense is in our country and kind of what a lot of people do, which is, I'm not saying it's bad, not question it, don't want to get canceled on on YouTube. I'm not trying to fight the algorithms here, but I'm just saying, I think you have to dig a little deeper, is what I'm trying to say to you guys. You got to dig deeper. If you really want to help yourself, you really want to heal, you got to dig deeper and really question everything. And that's when I started to question everything, because what I was doing, and then I moved again when I was 17, that made me go back down. See, and there's another correlation. I forgot to write that. So again, at 17 years old, guess what happened? I went from living in the same house for 7 years, just like I did the first time around for 7 years. I moved again. And this time I'm going through all the stuff that just happened too when I was at 9th, 10th grade. So getting out all that. Then I move again. And so 17 years old. Same thing. I'm going through health anxiety. But again, I had to move again. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel settled. It was change. And so a lot of my root cause of my anxiety was all centered around safety. Safety centered around change, not feeling settled, anything that didn't make me feel safe. And then all these subsequent events after 11 years old, 13 years old, 15 years old, 17 years old. And so I hope I'm not talking too fast for you guys. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm trying to explain here today. And I hope you guys kind of get a grip how I figured out, how I identified my root cause, so you in turn can do it for yourself. Because if you really want to heal your anxiety, if you really want to take your life back, if you really want to, you guys got to remember something. Anxiety is not who you are. You don't have to live with anxiety forever. The kid right there on the screen, like this kid earlier here at, there you go, interacting with people. But that kid right there, just that kid right there didn't give a shit. Didn't, you know what I mean? I was up, like I said, I was up on stage in front of a whole crowd. I'm just using that example. Like, I was free, I was vibrant, wasn't shy at all. You know what I mean? I just didn't care at all. Like, I was just a kid. Well, guess what? When you identify your root cause, you can get back to that feeling again. And a lot of people don't feel that. Like, that's why the anxiety guy always says that too. Like, you can feel like a kid again. And you do, in a way. And the last year, guys, that's how I felt right there. More and more each and every day. Now, don't get me wrong. I've had some tough days, had some bad days. But that feeling on the inside of just feeling free, living life again, chasing dreams, chasing things that I want in my life. You know what I mean? The things that I desire, and going for things that, people and things that I really admire. And so, but again, I found all this through, because I was able to identify my root cause. And through doing that root cause, I was able to reframe them. And by reframing, I was able to make a better relationship with that fear and understand what that fear really was. Not blaming anybody. It was nobody's fault. It just happened. And also through all this as well, I was able to understand why, and I mentioned this in my last episode, that me going through all this was the best thing that ever happened, because it set me up for where I am now. It set me up for where I'm heading. But I was able to look back at all the lessons I've learned, all the growth. If I would have went through just the normal, typical high school, college, yada yada, I'm not saying that's bad, but if I would have went through, for me, just the same old, and kept carrying on, if we would have kept doing as a family what we were doing, I would not be sitting here today with you, and I would not be happy in my life. I could tell you that. I would not be. I'd probably be, and I've seen this with a lot of people I grew up with, and a lot of people I see. A lot of people went down that road. And their parents forced them to do a lot of things, and they were made to do a lot of things that they didn't want to do. They were trying to be what everybody else wanted them to be constantly. Things didn't work out. And now you get out of college, or you're getting out, you have to really kind of live on your own, but you're also not, let's say, just living on your own, but also you're in the real world now. You're in the real world. You have to be able to think for yourself and be able to identify things. And a lot of people, though, they get out, they start to feel lost. They start to get scared because they weren't shown, maybe they were helicoptered and they're bulldozer parents, they try to bulldoze their way through everything and protect the kids and shelter them. And I think it's so key to what happened with me was the best thing that happened for me and for my family, because it was able, like I said, all those lessons of growth, but it prepared me for where I am now, but for the real world and where I'm heading. One day I will be married. I'll be a husband to someone. One day I will have kids, and I'll be a father to somebody. And I'll be able to look back at those times when I was 6, 7 years old, when I saw my mom and dad going through that, right? And all the time, and all the stuff I know now about mental health and just everything, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I'm still growing, but all these lessons I've learned and also most importantly to share with you guys and help people and hopefully inspire other people. You know, God just working through me. That's all it is, not me. Um, but with saying all this, it was all because I was able to find out the root cause, mostly because I was able to identify the fear. Once I identified the fear, everything started to just click together, just like that. And so, I mean, you see what I wrote it down. So 6, 7 years old, I have that feeling, then it goes to 11. So it's the root cause, right? Mine was at 6, 7 years old. I had subsequent events after that. That's what they're called, subsequent events. So 11, 13, 15, 17, right? All up until I was 21 years old. And so that's really how it goes. A lot of the things that maybe some events you've had in the last 10 years of your life that have been maybe traumatic, or 20 years could all be connected to that root cause. Not saying it. It's not. Sometimes some people you can develop this later on in life too. It doesn't have to be just from the age of zero to 7. But for the most part, for a lot of people, if you look statistically in studies, and from the ages of 0 to 7 is when a lot of it occurs. Some type of event, some type of traumatic event. That's why you hear a lot of people do like the breathing techniques that I follow. And you should say a lot of people start not breathing properly when they have their first like traumatic event as a kid. Something that makes them start to breathe hard. Right? That's been proved over time. And so, yeah, that's how I identified my root cause. And I wanted to share this with you guys today because I wanted to share with you guys because it's good for what helped me was to hear other people share their story and to share how they identified it and to share how, to relate to you guys, to understand like, hey, you're not the only one going through it, but also if I can find it, if I can get better, if I can do what I've done, anybody can do it. You're just as capable as me. Don't think we're all in this together. And that's why I try to help everybody. I don't care where you're from, where you are. I don't judge anybody. I'm just a regular old dude that just rides a bike and cuts grass. All right. So, and just enjoys life. And, I just sit back and have me, right now I'm drinking apple juice. And so I don't drink alcohol or anything, but if, you see me out, I'm just drinking apple juice or orange juice. So, or water. I don't know. It's kind of lame, but, nah, but, no, I mean, just again, though, back to the point, just that's how I found my root cause. And so I really hope you guys can identify yours. If you're really going through anxiety and panic, because I hear a lot of people, man, that I've talked to, especially within the last year, a lot of people I've talked to, mainly within the last year, because I've reached out and I've talked to some people who reached out to me through this because of what I do now. And so one of the main themes I hear is people will kind of explain to me their anxiety, but they'll say it from a managing standpoint. And I'm not judging anybody because guess what? This was me for a while. And this is why I'm doing this video and why I've done what I've done, because I'm trying to help people. Like, hey, man, there's another perspective on it. Let me try to give you this perspective instead because I want to see you grow. And so, again, a lot of people will reach out to me from a managing standpoint. And what I mean by that is they'll say, well, I've done a lot of this type of work and this type of work, and this has helped me and this helped me, and it's helped me just kind of manage, but I'm still struggling with it really bad. And I say, okay, have you really figured out what? And I'll ask them, what do you think? What are you really worried about? Like, for a lot of times for me, for years, guys, this is why people, I know, because I've been through it. Like, for years, I would try to ignore that. I tried to forget about ninth grade. I tried to like stuff all that aside and just be angry at it. And I would just focus on managing the symptoms and managing the thoughts and managing the feelings and all this crap that you can't. If you're trying to logically think your way or just trying to manage the feelings and manage and trying to get by and I feel better, you're not really going to heal in the long run. Because guess what? Something's going to happen again where you're going to be challenged. It's part of life. And you're going to go back down again. And you'll start to question yourself more and more. And it could be anything. It could be, maybe you got a big one nowadays. I hear a lot of people is relationships, because dating nowadays, I've never dated, and I'm glad I've been patient, waiting. I'm gonna wait and let God lead me. But a lot of people, man, they're in a big hurry because society says hurry up and settle. But anyway, people, it's a lot of emotional damage done, or maybe That's one aspect. Could be a relationship ended, right? Maybe someone left you, and that I understand that could be hard on you. But for some people too, it could be like that's a big one you see nowadays because social media I think influences that as well with the emotions. It's not healthy. That's a whole nother story. But it could be maybe you had changed as well. Maybe someone was not in your life anymore. Maybe you just passed away or what, something that maybe happened. Right? Anything can happen to you. Anything can happen anytime. We don't control anything. And so maybe you can lose your job. You can go to work tomorrow. So they say you're fired. Your boss has to let you go, or something happened. I mean, anything can happen. Something that could challenge you. But a lot of people, when you face those challenges, it can take you either back down into a deeper hole, and that managing kind of just goes to crap because you can't really manage. New things occur. You're kind of when you're managing, you're just managing where you are, right? But if something happens that changes you or affects you, you the management doesn't really mean anything anymore. It has no value anymore because you're in a new situation, right? It's something new. It's something that changed you. It's something that's impacting you in a negative way or whatever. It's changing you, and so that's why it's important to get to the root cause. And I need some water. Hold on. Woo! That's some high quality H2O right there. But anywho, um, no, I mean you got to find that root cause, and you got to be able to identify because once you find that, it unlocks everything else. And let me tell you, it's unlocked everything for me. And yes, I still go through. I'm still growing and working through some things in my own journey. But I'm not where I used to be, and just like that, within the last year, I'm a completely different person in a better way. And not only that, I'm my true self. I'm becoming who God designed me to be. And I'm also going back to that kid there on the screen right there, that revigoration for life, and to feel free again, and to just to let go, just be carefree. That's where I'm heading back to. And that's who I've been becoming, chasing dreams, chasing things I desire. Right. Um, yeah, and along the journey, you start to learn patience. You start to learn how to wait for things, wait for God's timing. That's a big thing. Sometimes, you know, um, which is again, that's another thing in life too. That's another thing you can add. Sometimes maybe you gotta wait for things. You gotta be patient, right? That's another thing I've learned recently. But all of this has helped me because I've been able to identify that main root cause and that fear. And I hope you do the same. And once you do, it's the start of something great. And if you get diagnosed with anxiety or panic, guys, don't panic. Don't freak out. Say, oh my gosh, this is who I am. It's not who you are, number one. It's actually a great thing. It's a great thing. Because now you know what's going on. Especially if you're a hypochondriac. You know it's not your health related. You know you're healthy. Right? Or whatever it is. But it's actually a great thing. Because you can take that and it can be the start of you. You can take it as an opportunity to grow and to heal and become better and become your true version, become your true self, and to be free and live. You know what the problem is, so now we can work through it. We don't have to manage it. We can identify it and we can heal from it. We can overcome it, and it could be it's just a chapter in your life. That's all it is. But it's a chapter though. It's the most important chapter in your life, though. I can tell you that because it's going to set you up for what's next and all the great things to come. And so, woo, I'm a little tired. A lot of talking. Let me get back on camera. And so, yeah, that's how I found my root cause. I hope this video helped you guys today. I hope this story helped you how I broke all this down. And so, again, mine was all related to safety. And so, but safety can go many different ways. It doesn't have to be just health related. And when I got to my ninth grade year, there's a lot of ways I did. Looking back now that I know all this, there's a lot of things I didn't feel safe doing. Didn't feel safe approaching certain people. Didn't feel safe put myself out there. I didn't feel safe. And you start to play everything safe. And a lot of people do that now in society too. They play everything safe. Everybody likes to play safe and to hide in a little bubble and allow that fear to control them down here, and it keeps you in a little bubble, your anxiety. But again, I was able to poke through that hole and to open and go like this and start to see what the truth really is. Was you don't have to live in a little bubble. You don't have to play everything safe. You can be free. You can go out and approach people. You can Be who you want to be. Things are never what you make them out to be. Things were never what I made them out to be in my head. What I thought, especially back then. But again, all that was due to it was start an initial event and it was subsequent events. And by the time it got to really bad when I was in ninth grade to a real more dramatic change, and just not just to change stuff, but like I said, a lot of things that it was a lot of internal conflict because there was things that I really wanted to do that year that I really desired, and I couldn't. I just didn't feel comfortable enough to do it because it was hesitation. It was I didn't feel comfortable or safe doing it, and I also didn't know how to express it. And also, you just didn't really, like I mentioned in my last episode, you just don't really hear even nowadays. Still, you don't really hear a lot of just proper people that have been through what you've been through, like just help and just notice like you're not the only one. To things that help people to help you guide through. Like, hey, that's why I put out this video in the last one. There might be somebody else that's going through exactly what I went through, and maybe hoping through me, not me, but God working through me. Maybe they can help themselves now. Maybe they can understand. Hey, I can relate to you, and yeah, I did go through that. That makes sense. I can relate to you in some ways, and maybe I could. Man, it does make sense. I can remember an instance when I was 6, 7 years old, or 5, whatever, and no wonder why I felt the way that I did because I felt like that. And you see what I'm saying? You start to unlock everything. But again, it's because I found somebody just by Googling. I went on YouTube and just because at that time, it's when I was 18 years old, I was doing lawn care. And so I learned lawn care from a guy online by the name of the Lawn Care Nut. Shout out to Alan Hain. Um, and I learned how to do lawn care from many people on YouTube. I went on YouTube, just educated myself, and because it helped me with my business, what I was doing at the time. And so I said, man, if I could find out about lawn care, I just went on anxiety, or I went on YouTube one day and just typed in anxiety help, and anxiety guy was the first one that popped up. And I saw the title of the video. I can't remember the exact video, but I remember I was like, man, that sounds kind of interesting. And I remember I turned on the video, and I remember I went on my little bike ride I was going on at the time, just around the corner and back. That's as far as I can go. And I remember just listening to him talk, and I was just the way he was describing things. It felt so personal. It felt like I finally found what I was looking for. It was 3 years up until that point. I just couldn't figure it out. And I finally found somebody who understood exactly what I was going through because they had been through it, number one. But also, they just, because they had been through it, they knew how to get through it. They knew how to, like, okay, this is what helped me. This is what you can do to get better. And you don't have to do all this other stuff. You don't got to pay to do it. You can just help yourself. And so that's why I do what I do is because of somebody like him that helped me. And so now I try to do the same for you. And so I hope this helped you today to help in the last video as well. They kind of go together in a way. And so, um, yeah, let me know below or message me or let me know. I would love to hear your guys' feedback. If you're comfortable doing it. If you need help, let me know. Hey, well, I'm always open to help you, whether I know you or not. Please reach out. Don't be. I'm not a scary person. So, you know, but no, please reach out. Please take the help. I'm offering it to you guys. The anxiety guy offers it. There's so many people out there, resources. Just talk to somebody. Like, just start to help yourself, man. Don't live with this shit forever. That's what it is. It's shit. It's just holding you back. You don't have to live with this. Don't accept this. Don't accept managing. Don't accept the same old stuff. Don't quit trying to, a lot of people try to hang on to things and try to, uh, it's just like retreads. You know what I mean? It's just like trying to manage and keep the same. That's a managing out. You're just trying to keep. It's just the same cycle, guys. And I know because I've been there. All right. But if you really want to help yourself, you got to be honest with yourself, and you got to by being honest with you, you got to look deep. You got to really ask yourself some questions, just like I had to about looking within 6, 7 years old. You know what I mean? And I think safety can be the problem for a lot of people in many different ways. Maybe what's holding you back now from moving on for a lot of people, and whatever it is. Like if you were with the same job for a lot of years, you were with the same person in a relationship for a lot of years, you were with you lived in the same home like me for a lot of years. You could not feel safe, and that could spark that unsafe feeling. Could spark a lot of your anxiety. I think safety is a big, big component when it comes to anxiety and when it comes to root causes. Now, the situations can be different, right? Like mine could be different than yours, and so um, because of that, I know I'm an hour in, but screw it, we're already here. I'm not going to talk during this video. It's a 9-minute video. Please pay attention to this video, guys. If you go to pause this and come back and watch it later, then come back and watch it later. You do not want to miss. You don't come this far after all we talked about today and not watch this video, because this video, my man, anxiety guy, it's about safety, and it's about being a safety addict. And really ask yourself what he's going to say here. Yeah, I'm not going to talk through it, I promise, because I've talked enough today. So I'm going to let him explain this for 9 minutes about being a safety addict. He's going to break it down and really ask yourself these hard questions. And this will really help you get to that root cause. Because, like I said, if you really want to get better, this is probably the most important video I've ever done. And so if you really want to get better, ask yourself today these questions and ask yourself, does it connect to you? And maybe it's not safety, maybe it's different things. But I think safety, like I said, is in many different ways. You can hold yourself back from moving on. Take the emotion out of it, take the logic out of it, and just be direct and ask yourself these questions. All right. So I'm gonna play this video and then we'll close it out.
My friends, my warriors, welcome to another important video. If you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please go ahead and do that now. As well, you can head on over to Amazon now and pick up F Coping Start Healing and Beyond Anxiety and gain the practical tools you need to not only heal anxiety, but to begin shining your beautiful light into the world. So pick up those books today and begin reading them. I'd love to hear from you in terms of what you thought about those books. And warriors, today it's about safety addicts. That's right. I never realized that I was a safety addict until I realized that my life wasn't changing. It wasn't getting any better. It wasn't getting worse, but I wasn't satisfied. Does that sound like you? Not satisfied with living this way, seeing the same people all the time, having the same experiences, going through the same thought patterns, same belief systems, same occupations, same. You know, yes, you can live a very safe life in this way, but it's not really how we're supposed to be living. And I want to give you a couple examples of what it's like to be a safety addict. And I want you to comment below so that maybe I can create a light bulb moment within you to go, hey, I'm sick and tired, literally, of being a safety addict. Relationships. You never share your ideas with other people. Why? Because you're afraid that you may not be acknowledged, you may not be respected. The relationship might be broken if you do share your ideas, right? So you play it safe. Career. You're afraid to step out of your career and into a new endeavor, new creative aspects of your life. Why? Because you're afraid to leave the comforts of your own career right now, your job, your occupation. Kids. You always tell your kids to be careful. Be careful when you do that, Johnny. Be careful when you do that, Cindy. Be careful, be careful, be careful. The only thing you're doing is installing irrational fear into your child, fear that they're going to have to work through later on in their life. So what you want to make sure you do is recognize that be careful aren't the words that you want to continuously use with other people simply because you want to stay in a safe place. As well, your health. Maybe you're eating salads, vegetables, you're getting your minerals. But the truth is that you're eating these things so that you can prevent illness or disease rather than create good, sound health. Does that sound like you? If that's the case, then you're not really creating any feeling or emotion behind what you're eating, right? And if there's no feeling or emotion behind the foods that you're putting into your body, you're not going to benefit from eating those foods much. So you have to have a better relationship with those foods and realize that, hey, I'm not here eating this food because I'm trying to prevent a disease or illness. I'm trying to gain sound health here, right? And that's going to change everything. If you're a safety addict, we have to move away from a space of fear and move into a space of trust. Because in that moment, in that moment, you have choices. Yes, your survival instincts and your emotional brain will say, hey, continue to do what you've always done in this situation. But your intuition and your thinking brain, once activated, will tell you, hey, it's also going to be safe if you go in this direction instead. And as you go through the day, you're going to have many opportunities to either play it safe or to begin truly healing and coming into your own. I want to talk about these right here, right now. When we talk about what to do in the present moment to eliminate being a safety person, we must practice consciously seeing the good pieces within the environment and the good that others have done for us, right? Because instinctually, what's going to happen is you're going to focus on all the things in your environment that could go wrong, right? You're going to focus on all those things that could go wrong. In turn, what's going to happen is you're going to live a life of prevention. If you live a life of prevention, you're always going to be stuck in irrational fear, always looking to prevent the worst from happening. You're never going to be creative. You're never going to come into your own. So it's your job to begin strengthening your conscious mind in the present moment to say, hey, in this environment, there's a lot of pieces of information that my senses are picking up. What do I see that I, in fact, enjoy? What do I hear? What do I feel? What do I taste? What do I smell? Right? These are conscious acts. So you can do these things to eliminate your safety behaviors in the present moment as well. When it comes to something in the future, something that you're afraid of, something that you're hesitant towards, you can overwhelm that experience with the good potentials, right? Yes, there's going to be an experience in the future, and yes, you have some hesitancy towards it. But think about the good that can come out of that experience rather than the bad. And if you continue to focus on the good, what's going to happen is you're going to even the playing field. The playing field between your instincts and your intuition. And what's going to happen is your intuition is going to start becoming strengthened. When your intuition gets strengthened, then you're living through your heart. You're not so much living through your head, because people with anxiety live through their heads, not through their hearts. So we must eliminate these addictions to safety, and we must come into our own by recognizing in the moment what's taking place. Okay, because with anxiety, what tends to happen is we think that we are very limited in our choices. We think that we have to play life out each and every day the same way, or else something's going to go wrong. We feel like we always have to stand guard towards the next threat that isn't even here. It's not here, nor is it in the future, but it's a story. That's all it is. It's a story. And the truth is that you've been programming yourself into fear for far too long, right? And it's time to reprogram yourself. It's time to recondition new ideas, new ways of seeing things, new behaviors, a new identity, a whole new perspective over your life. Because let me tell you something. When you engage in the new, everything's going to be just fine. I promise you. You're not going to have regrets when you move towards the unfamiliar. You're not going to have regrets when you move towards your fears and uncertainties. You're not going to have regrets when you start being a big part of the creation aspect of your life. Never allow the programming from your past to dictate what you do in the present and who you become, because that's what's happening right now. You're a safety addict. Yes, I'm speaking directly to you. You can move away from a space of fear and into a space of trust. If only you can embrace the unfamiliar. and embrace the uncertainty and respect those as much as you respect your fears. And my friends, I want to leave you with this. Living a safe life will lead to regret. Living a trustworthy and creative life will lead to fulfillment. Remember that you are more than anxiety, and I want you to comment below right here, right now, and tell me what you're going to do today to begin eliminating yourself from these safety acts. What are you going to do? What change are you going to make? I'd love to hear it. Comment below. And if you have any other questions on the health anxiety program, head on over here.
Shout out to man Dennis, great video like always. Yeah, a lot of what he said there, guys. Before I get out of here, just again, that's what happened to me when I was a kid. That's my root cause. Didn't feel safe, and a lot of things I did was centered around, like he said there. I started to build habits around safety habits. I played everything safe. In times when I didn't feel, and as I got older, the subsequent events happened that didn't make where I didn't feel safe. I panicked more. I created more fear and anxiety. And then I started to try to prevent. Keyword prevent, prevent, prevent. And I would try to prevent everything, even as a little, at 11, 12 years old. I was trying to prevent an illusion. That's all it was, based around an illusion. I was trying to prevent, and and that carried on until I was ninth grade. And so when I was in ninth grade, I would, like you said there, prevention then turns into you overwhelm yourself. You always look at the negatives in every situation, and you start to question yourself. You start, you know what, I'm not ready, or you know what, I can't do that, or you hold yourself back, you limit yourself, and that's what I did. And what happened then after that, like you said, prevent living a safe life. You start to regret things, and you start to you start carrying that regret, and all that. All this just grows more and more and more, and you're the one that's carrying it, right? And so, um, that's where I was for years. That's why I was really depressed when I had to leave school like that, and I had to think about all that. Not only that, too, there was a lot of things too. People were saying, I think there was a lot of misinformation people were saying about me, or that I thought. But again, all that could have just been, again, just it's all misinterpretation, all just a big. You start to overthink everything, right? Things are never what you make them out to be, what you thought they were, and so living with your head but not your heart. And when you do that, like you said, you try to logically think your way through everything. You start to try to play everything safe, prevent. You hold yourself back from doing new things, and so that's what I found out for me and my root cause, and that's why now in my life, a lot of things I've done in the last year, um, whether the results were maybe how I wanted at that time, um, or whether things there's a lot of things I'm still growing and working towards, right? I'm just began a lot of things in the last year, but I've never done a lot of these things I've done the last year if I didn't finally just believe myself to do it, and to have no regrets and to go for it. Look at the good in every situation. That's what's helped me. That's why I've done a lot of things that have helped me, because I've looked at all the good possibilities that come out from each one of them. And a lot of times it's usually a lot more good than we think bad. Usually it really isn't a lot of bad. I mean, I think there's wins, and I think there's lessons, and I think there's growth in everything you do, whether it's something new you do, or but everything's to better you. If God allows it, if God calls you to do something to lead you a certain way, it's for a purpose. He's not going to call you to set you up to fail. That's not God. God is not setting you up to fail. Like the verse says, and we know that all things work together for good. All things, everything works together. Things we don't know about, things we don't have the answers to. Guess what? All things are going to work together for good to them that love God. And so, trust in Him and His promises, right? And it's like a verse. I read a verse last night in Psalms, and it talks about I lay down with I think it was Psalm. I don't want to misquote it, but it talked about in the verse it says I lay down and I sleep, and it talks about and He gives me safety. I'm kind of paraphrasing the verse a little bit. Actually, I really I haven't seen this verse in a long time, but it popped up on my phone, and it's kind of funny. It goes with everything today. I'll post it on my just check out my Instagram. I'll post the verse, but um, yeah, I mean, just focus on him and his promises. With God on your side, and all this, once you know what that fear is, like you identify that, you got the power over. I mean, you got everything you need. You're capable of doing all things, and so, um, and that's what it's been for me. And I've everything I do now is I don't have any regrets in anything I've done, and even the things back then where I used to, be down on myself, like back when I was in ninth grade, or I used to those years after I was down, I would kind of question myself, like, man, you should have did this, and I'd have a kind of like form of regret in a way. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't. It was exactly what had to happen at that time. And it's a good thing certain things didn't happen back then. It's a good thing. I'm glad certain things didn't happen back then. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad God didn't take me down certain roads or didn't allow certain things because it wouldn't have been good for me anyways in the long run, and it would have been worse uh, on me. And so, um, again, all things work together for good. And so, and I'm able to be where I am now. And again, I hope with all this today, um, how I identified my root cause, everything Dennis just said there, that's kind of like the next phase. And once you identify it and ask yourself those questions, are you playing things safe? And you got to really, that's really where it starts. What he says there at the end, living a safe life only lead to regret. And so that's all. Before I get out of here today, ask yourself this question: once you identify that root cause, what are you going to do about it? Once you pinpoint, all the problems, what are you going to do about it? It's right to know thing. Awareness is great. Get that. But I was in that awareness phase for a little bit. But guess what? Now it's time to, what are you going to do about it? Are you ready to move forward now? Are you ready to move on? Because that's what you got to ask yourself. You got to really ask yourself this hard question. Like, you got to look yourself in the mirror. I'm not saying you got to go climb Mount Everest tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to give you like this motivational speech. No, no, no. I'm just trying to say, you know, do you really want to help yourself? Do you really want to make it better? Do you really want to start reframing um, that root cause? Because you know what, when you start to identify things, guys, it might be you might have to finally confront never wanted to confront again. But in order for you to move past it, you have to. You can't try to hide everything forever. You can't try to manage and try to cope and try to it's like trying to fix something that doesn't want to be fixed. It's like if you're trying to help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. You keep trying to rework. It's not going to work. They don't want to help themselves. It may get better for a little bit, but down the road, it ain't going to work because they don't want to help themselves. So, do you really want to help yourself now? Now do you know? There's guess what? The resources out there. You can contact me, and I can lead you. I can help you any way I can. Most probably go to Dennis's website. Seek help. Find a good counselor. Find somebody that wants to invest in you and wants you to grow just as much as you do. Right? They want to help you. They want to see you grow. Because we all need help. You can't do it. You don't do. Don't think you have to do this all on your own. Now there's a period. There's times where you have to. A lot of what you do is on your own by working. You have to do the work. Can't make you do it, but um, there's support people out there who want to help you along the way, and things don't have to be perfect for you to do them. And I've said that before on the show. And there's never a right time or perfect thing. Just go for it. Like we all know. If we're really being honest with ourselves. We all know when it's time to go. Like there's no more pissing around. No more. Like okay, it's time to move forward now. No more carrying around this baggage. No more living this everything in a safe life. No more of that. I know what it is now, and we take it one step, one day at a time. And everybody's progress is slower than others. Slow progress is still progress, right? That's why it's good to find good people and to find the right people to put in your life. And God will put the right people in your life. And that's what he's slowly doing. He's done with me. He's reconnecting me with people, and he's also connecting me with new people who it's been really cool to get to know them it's been a slow process in a lot of ways, but it's been pretty cool. But I know God will only allow things, again, not set me up to fail, but to help me. And he's brought a lot of people in my life in the last year or two that have some people I've never even met or, just never really knew. And they've helped me in a lot of ways, and hopefully I've helped them, and it's like a slow process, but it's been very cool. And you just kind of sit back, you're just a lot more patient with things, and you just kind of let things happen. Yes, there's human. We're always gonna have the human side of us, but being patient, trusting God, and allowing, which is the key word there, allowing what I'm getting at. But just by allowing, take it step by step, one day at a time, and believing that you know you're heading in the right direction and you're in God's will and He's got it from here, and you're doing all the work, it's gonna happen, guys. You're heading in the right direction. I mean, like I said earlier, that feeling like a kid, like I said earlier, that feeling like a kid again, like right here on the screen, you know, you can have that same feeling again because I got the same feeling reinvigorated back into me just by creativity and just life in general, all the possibilities. Your dreams and realities really, your dreams really can become realities and your goals. And I'm going through that. I've been going through that in the last year. Things I never thought would happen again or have an opportunity to do, or things I thought were gone away, they were still there. And guess what? They're better now. Everything's better now. Just saying, everything's better. And so it's better when you allow God to mold it, manifest everything, because His timing is always right. And so, hope this helped you guys today. Like I said, if you need any help, reach out to me. I got my contact below. If you know me, any way you can, you know how to get a hold of me. And the anxiety guy as well. He'd love to help you. Go check out his programs. A lot of great programs. The Inner Circle program is probably great. I would say start with that one, the Inner Circle program. 16 weeks, one day at a time. It's not real intense, like you think it is, but it's gonna get you to where you need to be. And you'll be free, a lot freer, and you really find out a lot about yourself and who you really are. And yeah, just reach out to somebody, guys, and pray, and just pray. Keep leaning into that word and praying into the Spirit, and He'll let you know. He'll guide you. And He's done that with me a lot in the last year. He's shifted me towards some things that I've kind of like. At first, I was like, really, I don't know if I want to do that. But the Spirit will speak to you if you, and that's when you know you're like, okay. I don't know what's going on, God, but I'm looking at all the good possibilities here, and I trust you, and I'm gonna do it. And even if I don't know after, I'm gonna still trust you because all things work together for good. And so remember that. But again, love all you guys. If you need any help, like I said, reach out. Leave a comment below your thoughts today. Hit that like button for me. That'll help me. Go follow me on Rumble. I love what I'm doing over there on Rumble. I'm just getting started. I'm gonna do a lot more videos, a lot more raw content, shorter videos as well. And so go check that out on Rumble. And go follow me on Rumble. You might have to create an account, create one. That's actually a great platform as well. A lot of cool people on there. I think it's relatively newer, but very raw, cool place to be. Excited to be over there in Rumble. Yeah, I love all you guys. Thank you to everyone who's supported me throughout this whole process. This is probably the most support video I've done since my first one, the last two. And so looking forward to where it goes from here. And yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and all that good stuff. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here.